Just in time. Greetings, everyone. I'm Luke Bryan Smith, and welcome to Enlightened Empowered Evolved, where we educate, motivate, and liberate you through enlightening dialogues, empowering music, and evolving content. I am excited yet again because my next extraordinary guest, over the past 30 years, has dedicated his life to guiding couples and individuals through relationship struggles. He is also the author of 7 books on relationships and thriving in life. Yes, yeah. Did I say that right?
You did. You
Yeah,
got it.
thriving in life. Because at first I thought, did I write down the title of a book called it? No, but no, that's okay. This podcast is free flowing like that, so it doesn't have to be robotic. It's fine. But without further ado, allow me to introduce to you Dr. Lee Baucom.
Uh, Look,
How are
thank
you?
you for having me. Yeah. How are
Yes,
you?
I'm doing absolutely fabulous. And I would like to say this that I believe that time is one of our most precious assets. So for you to decide to spend even a moment of your time here with me in the history of your timeline, thank you very much. I want to extend my sincerest gratitude to you for being
Oh,
here.
I'm honored. I'm honored to
Yes,
be here.
absolutely. Yes. And I'm honored to have you here. So let's just get right into it, Dr. Lee. All right. Over the past 30 years, you've dedicated your life to guiding couples and individuals. Give us a little through relationship struggles. Give us a bit of insight of how that came to be and what that all entails. I know we only have 30 minutes, but give us
We'll
the
hit the
condensed
highlights.
version. And yes,
Yeah, so I'll start in one place, go back to another, and come forward. Um,
absolutely.
when I was in college, I was kind of doing the what am I going to do? I thought I was going to do business, and just it wasn't fitting. And so I was asking myself, what do I do? And I'm asking my mom, and she said, well, what do you find yourself attracted to? And I realized that I was always the confidant for people. In
Right.
high school and all the way through college, people would come to me and tell me about their issues and their problems. And so I was like, yeah, I want to do therapy. And so I did grad school. I was trained as a therapist, and I got training as an individual therapist, and then decided to specialize in marriage and family therapy. So it's kind of a systems approach. And that's what I gravitated towards. It took me a while after I got out when I was doing that work to realize that part of the reason was because in my extended family, I saw some pretty ugly divorces.
Right.
I had an uncle who had lots of, I'm not sure how many divorces there were, and an aunt and another, 2 aunts that had some pretty destructive divorces to the point that I have cousins, I don't even know where they are in the world,
Wow.
that don't even know how to locate them. And
Wow.
so I watched that, and I remember as a child going, "What is wrong with this?" Because my parents are still happily married. My grandparents had good relationships, and I had others around me, but those destructive ones, I just asked the question, why?
Right.
And so as I left, I was actually finishing my dissertation. We were in a very small house at that point, and my wife's on the couch behind me, and I'm at this desk that we had rigged up. And I was reading an article about this is back in the 90s about this new profession of life coaching. And I turned to
Mm,
her and said,
right.
"This is how I do my work." And she said, "What are you going to do? You're at the end of a PhD. What are you going to do?" And so I finished up my dissertation, graduated, was already practicing, and knew I was already doing that. So I went and got formal training, another 3 years of training as a coach. And part of that time, I was critiquing how we were doing marriage therapy pretty ineffectively, in fact, according
Right.
to statistics, and
Right.
wanted to find the ways that we could actually help couples. That's what kind of landed me in this creating this program, the Save the Marriage System,
Wow.
and still is what I work around. I have two things that I think actually run in tandem. One is how to have a happy, loving, supportive marriage and how to have a thriving life. Those are not separate events. If you are in life, if you have a bad marriage, it's hard to thrive. And if you're
Yes,
thriving,
absolutely.
it brings along some pieces of your marriage. So those pieces do fit together, but they're two kind of
Mhm.
distinct areas of where I spend my time.
Right. Wow. Thank you for giving us a bit of insight on that. Absolutely. And I believe in my perspective, well, I know that your wellness is contingent upon what you do. your wellness in your relationships, your wellness with yourself. It's just, yeah, what you do is very powerful, and it's amazing that it's a passion of yours. And I'd like to highlight also that, you know, this is just my perspective. Is the people that were coming to you, and they noticed something about you. You're giving off an energy, you know, whether you knew it or not. You know that for people coming to you seeking, wanting to tell you their problems and
Mm.
wanting to seek some of your advice, your perspective. So that's amazing that you leaned into that. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think we do. And when we're doing our best work, we're working from a place that's deep within us that is already there. The gifts are already there, and we've just got to find what has been called the genius zone for us all. And I think it took me a while to find it, but I think I've kind of located it and try to stay there.
amazing. I want to ask, and this just came to me because I pride myself on this podcast just being these segments being just free flowing. I don't pre-write anything, but what would you say would be the most or some of the most um, uh, biggest struggles in regard to couples, marriages, relationships? What would you, in your perspective, in your insight, your experience,
Yeah.
would be the biggest, or
So
some of this? Okay.
let's see if we can turn this on its ear a little bit,
Okay.
because I think the question you're asking, people often name things
Okay.
that, in my estimation, are actually symptoms of the real issue. So I
Right.
want to dig down to what I consider to be the actual issue
Issue.
in the vast majority of relationships. There are a few that basically you have somebody who is toxic. They're broken within, right? They need their own help. And
Right.
so when that's true in a marriage, sometimes this is not the case.
Okay.
Well, this could be the case, but there's a bigger issue, right? That person's got the bigger issue. So
Right.
let's talk about the vast majority of relationships. I don't want to say run of the mill
Okay.
marriage crisis, but the typical marriage crisis. So let's backtrack. Um, People find this person that they are attracted to, and they decide that they want to invest in that relationship, and both sides are building the relationship, putting a lot of energy into it, doing a lot of connecting with each other. And so they're building the strong connection that they have to the point that at some point they say, hey, let's talk about this being for life, which, I mean, that's not a small undertaking to say I'm
Right.
pledging myself for life to this. And
Right.
so and which in that in itself is an interesting fact. We can come back and talk a little bit about what I think people believe about that versus what is real about that. But
Right.
let's carry it on. They've built this relationship, and so they decide to not just they, we. I did it too. Decide that we're going to do this little thing for life, this
Right.
relationship for life. And so we have a short ceremony, and you walk in single. It's you and this other person, and you come out us. We are in this now. This is the us. And then there is a point, and it's not right after people get married. It's not. I mean, there's not a like a set time, but there is a period, some point after they get married where they go, okay, we've got this relationship. We got it nailed down. We're married. Now we've got to get back to life.
Mm.
And that's
Okay.
when I call it hitting the pause button.
Mm.
So they hit the pause button subconsciously, sometimes even more subconsciously, but sometimes they're just like, after we do these things, we'll get back to us. We'll get back to this level we have. And so they're doing it for, I think, fairly good, rational reasons in their own mind.
Right.
But there's a problem that I'll unveil in just a minute. And so sometimes it's because it's time to have the kids. And so you're going to do that.
Right.
And you're like, okay, after the kids, after wherever they are, after they're out of diapers, after they're in school, after they're out of school, after on and on it goes, right? It's always rolling forward. Or
Right.
once my career gets to this point, or this point, or
Right.
it's dealing with the family, the parents, the friends, the travel, the hobbies, the whatever, we'll get back to us
Wow. Yes.
because we have this love that will sustain us, right? So
Mm.
that's what they believe. And for a while, the momentum carries them through because you create the momentum going into this. The problem is relationships cannot be paused. That is true in
Wow.
any relationship. You can't pause a relationship. Either they're growing and expanding or they're shrinking and dying. You hit the pause button, you think that you're putting it in kind of suspended animation. I always think of the
Right.
science fiction movies, right, where they're blasting off to some distant planet and everybody goes to their pod and goes to sleep and they get there and they,
Yes.
well, actually, it doesn't ever happen that way. It's always a problem on the way. And that's the case here. You think you're in suspended animation, but in reality, you've disconnected. So all
Wow.
of these symptoms that people name as the reasons they're having a problem, they root back all the way to that disconnection.
Mm.
So when you talk about fights about money, fights about parenting or
Right.
in-laws or affairs out there or these other things that happen in marriages,
Right.
they are a direct result of the fact that the connection has been broken when they hit the pause button.
Mm. Wow.
That makes sense?
Yes, let me interject in that a bit. And that's thank you for pointing that out because a lot of what you mentioned or all of what you mentioned is like an unsaid thing. Like we've been programmed often. I can't say everyone because I don't know everyone, but yes, we've been programmed to put other things first or to think we're putting other things first and to think we're doing the right thing even by the way we articulate it, the way we have the right intentions, but
Mm.
yeah, wrong. You know, okay, we'll get back to this after, like you said, after we do this, after we do that, after we meet this financial expectation, this career move, this kid, yeah, and you're doing more damage than you think, you know, and that's thank you for making us aware of that and highlighting that. Go ahead, Doc.
Sure. Yeah, so part of what we I want to kind of point out is the fact that when you're building the relationship, you're doing habits of connection, right? I mean,
Right,
that when you watch how people get into relationships, they naturally do these things. They're connecting. And so you're building these habits of connection. You
right.
get to this point, and then suddenly you're building habits of disconnection.
Mm,
And the habits are what carry us. So once we're in the habit of disconnecting, it's much harder to come back to that. It's not like you can just turn it back on because now you're out of the habit of it. And so while you spend all of the early part of the creating the relationship, building the connection and building the habits, hit the pause button and suddenly you're building the habits of disconnection. So
mm, wow.
so one of the reasons that I kind of left the therapy world, one of them, there were several, is because it always defaulted to communication.
Hmm,
And communication is, just like I said earlier, a symptom of the problem. So for years, I would sit there. I mean, it drove me crazy to hear it because all I was hearing was the cultural stuff. And people would come into my office and say, "We have a communication problem. You need to teach us to communicate better." And I would sit there and talk with them for 25, 30, 35 minutes. And at the end of that, I would say, I've understood every single word you've said, and each of you have understood each other's words. You're not having a problem of communication. It's what you're communicating that's the problem. So, communication is just a method of transferring information.
hmm,
It's what
right.
you're transferring that matters. Are you transferring connection? Or are you transferring more a language of disconnection? And if you're doing that, and I am going to teach you communication skills, all I'm doing is making you more skilled at arguing, not at being connected, right? And so we're trying to get to the place where there is now renewed connection.
Mm,
Those are different things. Connection and communication are nowhere near the same. Connection comes, there are three levels of connection that exist between people, and we communicate that connection,
okay.
but the communication is just a method of relaying that information. Like, I want to be with you, or I don't care whether I'm with you or not. Those are two very different messages that are communicated in the way we interact.
Yes, yes, you know, yes. There's what I like to call, and I hope this makes sense, verbal and nonverbal cues of in ways of communication. So we can think something in our head, but actually communicate it in not the right way. And
Mm.
yes,
So let's dive into that a little bit because so I said there are those three levels. Let's dive into it a little bit on what that would look like because that's
okay,
helpful for people to kind of assess where they are in their connection and also give some targets for how you might unpause a relationship that's been paused, because that is a central theme here, right? I mean, I don't want to just be sitting here going, "Here's the diagnosis. You're disconnected. See
Okay.
ya," right? That's a diagnosis. It's not a prognosis. We can
Okay.
change how things roll out, but only when we know what's going on.
Mm.
So the diagnosis is disconnection. Prognosis, well, that depends on what happens next. So let's talk about these three levels. The first level is physical connection. When I say this, people are often like, I'll say it in a crowd and they'll go, "Oh, you mean sex?" And my response is no, but yes, that is a way. So my puppy dog is lying beside me right now, sound asleep, but she understands physical connection. That's she wags her tail if I talk to her. I
Right.
don't think she understands what I'm telling her. If I tell her I love her, she doesn't know what that means. But she does understand it when she's up against me and I'm scratching her head or I'm scratching her
Mm.
belly.
Right.
She understands that. That is physical connection. So physical connection is loving touch.
Mm.
And we
Okay.
share that with pretty much every warm-blooded creature. That is nonverbal.
Right.
I
Right.
can't say, "Hey, I like to hug you," and that make you feel anything, right? That's just words.
Right.
A hug is what makes physical connection, and that creates a very primitive cascade within our bodies, right? Of closeness and of protection and safety. So
Absolutely.
if I'm going to connect with my pup, she gets a scratch, and she wants to be up against me too. That's her way of saying, "I trust you. I'm safe with you," right? So that's physical connection. Layer one. And I don't mean by this that you're working through them. It's just that this is one pillar, one layer of connection. So we'll go to the next layer.
Okay.
The next layer is verbal and nonverbal. So this is emotional connection. An
Mm.
emotional connection is nonverbal in the sense that I could be having this long conversation as I am in the middle of right now, and you're nodding your head in agreement. You're not having to say anything for me to know that you go, "Oh, yeah, okay, I got where you're coming from," right? So that's nonverbal. And turning towards somebody and paying attention when they're talking, nonverbal, but very
Right.
connective. It makes them
Right.
feel like you're emotionally there with them. Then there are two feelings that come out of that. When I feel like my spouse gets me and I get my spouse, like we get each other. And so my wife laughs at a joke of mine for whatever reason. I go, "Okay, she gets me." And vice versa. She does things and I respond to, and she says, "Okay, you get me." Then there is the we support each other. I feel supported, you feel supported, right? That there is a mutual support of what's when the tough moments, the high moments, the in between, that we feel supported and gotten. And that's emotional connection. We can do that non-verbally and verbally.
Right.
Then there's spiritual connection.
Mm.
When I say spiritual connection, people go, "Oh, you mean religion?" And my answer is no, but yes, that is a form of that. When you're telling your spouse what you believe, you're talking about your very core values. But I think of the spiritual connection as your deepest part of yourself, the part that you don't let everybody know, just like the part of you that doesn't emotionally connect at the same depth with other people or physically connect with other people. That is a part that is most highly done in a marriage, or the opportunity for that is there. Doesn't always happen, but it's there. So spiritual connection is letting somebody know what you dream about, what you hope for, what you fear, what's most important to you, what are your core values. The interesting thing is, and that is, by the way, verbal. You, there's no nonverbal to the spiritual stuff. You got to tell somebody what's most important to you. Now they can take it in and let you know that they're with you on that by nodding and nonverbal, but the communication of that is verbal. So what's interesting about that is for a number of years when I was in an office, anybody getting married in seven different places of faith in my community had to come through my office for three visits. And I would ask them, "How'd you fall in love?" And almost to the couple, they would say, "I really like this person. I knew they were great. I really like being around them. But one night we had this talk." And they talked about where they came from, what was important to them, where they wanted to go in life. They revealed things that they haven't revealed to other people, and they fell in love in that spiritual connection.
Mm. Okay.
Just didn't know to call it that. Now, the irony is that is something that many couples stop doing after a few conversations, and certainly after they're married. There's for a lot of couples, there is no conversation about what they hope for, dream for, wish for, fear, any of those things. So that one often falls away quickly, but the other two often do too. When couples start getting into the habit of reporting to each other instead of rapporting. Rapport is building that connection. Reporting is when I talk to you about what the kids did today, what I did today. And so if I walk in from the office and my wife says, "So how was your day?" And I go, "Well, I had three meetings and I turned in a report." That's not how my day was. That's what I did. There's nothing of depth to that. There's no connection. But that's what people do. They report. And so they think that they are still having these conversations, but because they have hit the pause button, the depth is shallow. There's not a lot, and then they don't have time for. I don't have time to sit on the couch and hold your hand. I don't have time to hug you as I'm running out the door. I don't have time to tell you what my big things are. Time is where they say, but I've got to do these other things, the kids, the career, the whatever, and that crowds out any of the other levels of connection.
That's amazing. And thank you again, doctor, for highlighting some a few points that we do, you know, but are not consciously aware that that's what we're
Mm,
doing,
yeah.
so, and I think that's very important. Awareness, that's to me, that's the start of the shift, the
Mm,
change that we know, hey, pay close attention. Are you having conversations like this? Because
yeah.
that's what you're really doing. You're not doing
Yeah.
what you think you're doing. So that's absolutely amazing. Thank you for laying that out there for us. And you're also, okay, an author of 7 books. Now, I know we don't have time to break down all 7 books, but could you give us a little insight? Give us a few titles and where we can find your books, and the general uh, subject matter in regards to your books, or there are various ones. Give us a little insight, please.
Yeah. So part of the books, I started with Save the Marriage, the system. And by the way, the shortcut to the books, if you want to see the books, you don't have to buy them where you see them. There, it's just a shortcut to put them in one place is savethemarriage.com/books. That's what you're
Okay,
looking at is the book. Savethemarriage.com
savethemarriage.com
slash books.
slash books. Okay.
Yep. That'll give you kind of a full view of the ones that I have done. So I started with Save the Marriage because I was trying to say, here is how you deal with a hurt marriage. And then I'll have people ask me questions, and people are like, it just seems like it's so complicated. So my first book on how to save your marriage in 3 simple steps breaks it down into the actually don't confuse simple and easy. Those are not the same thing. I mean, it's simple to lift 1,000 pounds. It ain't easy. So and I'm not comparing saving your marriage to lifting 1,000 pounds. I'm just kind of pointing the difference between simple and easy because people often say, you said it was going to be easy. Nothing important is easy in life.
No.
So simple. And simple means a direct approach. And there
Mm,
are three
okay.
pieces to that. Those are the 3 simple steps. And that's what led to that. I wanted to explain how you can understand that in a very simple approach. I
Right.
had a lot of people who were coming like, okay, but we had an affair, so I guess all bets are off.
Mm,
No, I've seen lots of marriages come back from that because they step back and go, wait, we were disconnected. That's why that could happen. It didn't mean it had to happen. Somebody is
right.
still 100% responsible for the actions they took that violated the boundaries of the relationship.
Absolutely.
But both people were in a disconnected relationship. Let me say it differently. And both people were in a disconnected relationship. They both
Wow.
existed at the same time. So then I wrote a book on recovering from the affair. Um, Along the way, I was doing a lot of studying on how people thrive, and that led to Thrive principles. I just noticed that there are consistent principles that people, when they follow them, were thriving, and when they didn't follow them, were not thriving. And so I outlined those in the Thrive Principles book. And then I had people who were going like, okay, I've got the principles, but why is my life a wreck? And the reason is because they were breaking what I called some immutable laws of living. That's why they kept getting stuck. So the immutable laws of living are how those thrive principles get thwarted by our actions and how you can get it back, which
Absolutely.
led to the point where people are going, yeah, but I can't let go of this thing because one of my big things is forgiving and recognizing that forgiving is not mandatory. It's an opportunity that we have the opportunity of forgiving. And when we claim that, we can let go of things and not let that event control us.
Mm,
which led to my book about how to forgive, the forgive process. So it's a specific step-by-step process to walk through forgiving. A lot of people realize that that applied to a thriving life and a hurting marriage all at the same time. Marriage fail point was when people needed to recognize how marriages finally do fail. They don't fail generally in one moment. In fact,
Right.
there's an analogy from my childhood. So my poor mom, coat hangers would go missing all the time because I needed a coat hanger for something. I did magic and other whatever when I was a kid. And so I would go claim a wire coat hanger, but I couldn't get to my dad's tools. And so I realized one day that if I started just working that wire back and forth, it would get hot. I sometimes had
Hmm.
burns there, but right, it would
Hmm.
weaken. As soon as I bent it one time, it was hard, two times not so hard. And I kept going until it failed. And that was its fail point when I did it enough. And so that was my kind of my analogy for what happens in marriage. Something happens over and over and over and over again until it finally fails. So
Right.
let's talk about what that is and how you avoid that.
Mm.
Along the way, people realized that, or I realized that people were struggling with three specific things. What do you do when your spouse is hopeless, helpless, and hurting? Those are the three barriers, and you got to get beyond the three barriers. So
Hopeless,
hopeless,
helpless,
helpless, and hurting.
hurting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so one of the things that I tried to create was a way to get beyond those three barriers. What do you need to do in order to do that? So that's the beyond the three barriers. And I think we may have just walked through all of them.
Wow. Thank you. And that's quite amazing in my perspective of how your one book led to the next, you know, step, if you will, in regards to the whole process of success in regard
Mm.
to relationships. And
Hmm.
so that's amazing. Thank you for laying that out there for
Sure.
us. And
Yeah.
where can you find these? Oh, that website that you mentioned.
Savethemarriage.com/books will let you
Okay.
see those books. There's also a journal that I created for people. It's the Thrive Journal. It's a morning thing and an evening thing you can do to figure out how to build your thriving life each day.
Okay. Amazing, amazing. Be sure to hit that link because that link will be incorporated into the description of this
Mm.
segment. Whoever's watching and or listening, check it out. Amazing. And you sent me that link too, right?
I think I did. And there are
Okay.
a couple of other places I think might be important for people because a lot of times people realize that their marriage is broken. So let's go back to that hope formula. There are three
Okay.
pieces to hope, as I lay it out. And this is not from my work; it's from other researchers' work. That hope comes when you know where you want to go, when you have the willingness to do what it takes to get there, and you know how to do it. And the know
You
how to do
know
it
where
is
you
a
okay.
problem. Yeah, know where you want to go. What is your goal? Your willingness to do it. So if I go, I want to go to the beach. I picked where I want to go.
Okay.
I'm willing to drive,
Okay.
but I need a map to help me get there. So I'm going to put that into my GPS. And now I have all three pieces. Now I have pretty good hope that I can do that trip, right? So if we apply that to marriage, a lot of people go, I really do want a loving marriage. I really want to do that. But I don't know how. I'm willing to do what it takes, but I don't know how. That's why I created the Save the Marriage system to spell that out. So, Save the Marriage system is built for people who really are at a point where their marriage is close to that fail point.
Mm.
So that's savethemarriage.com for that. Savethemarriage.com gets you to a lot of resources, but mainly the system. The other one is more recent, where I realized that people kind of understood how to get, and they weren't facing the end, but they knew what would happen if they didn't take action. Like they're not at the place where a spouse is saying, I want out, but both people are maybe not happy because they hit the pause button. And
Right.
so I created the Unpause app for
Mm.
people to take advantage of the fact that you can unpause a marriage just like you can pause a marriage, but you have to know how to do that. And people don't
Mm.
have that knowledge base. They're like, well, what are we going to do? We've now done this damage. We know where the damage heads if we don't change. And this is
Right.
the opportunity to change that around and make it very systematic. So we have trainings there, exercises there, and what I like about an app is it will remind you to take action morning and evening as you're trying to change your habits that
Yes.
creates the habit. So the Unpause app is at unpauseyourmarriage.com. That unpause, that's what you're trying to do, unpauseyourmarriage.com. So that kind of gives a pretty good range for people if they realize that they are in a struggling relationship. If they need to read about it, learn more about it, that's the books. If they really realize they're in a crisis situation and need to take action, that's a system. If they're not quite at the end of the rope, they just see the rope can get short and they're
Right.
going to work on that. That's unpauseyourmarriage.com.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And that sounds like some very enlightening, powerful information that can really assist people.
Hmm.
And I appreciate that for one. And I just want to commend you on that coming from me for what it's worth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And we're down to about 5 more minutes. So I just want to just ask you briefly if you could give us just a bit of insight on you have a podcast as well, Save the Marriage Podcast.
Yeah.
Now, it's pretty self-explanatory, but I want to hear it from your words, what it's about and where can we tune in?
Yeah, so URL is probably not surprising, savethemarriagepodcast.com.
Okay.
I try to be very direct in how I send people. So savethemarriagepodcast.com.
Right.
I've been doing that for a number of years, I think 12 years now. Their 590th episode comes out this week.
Oh, wow.
And it's designed
Congratulations.
to, no, thanks. It's designed to be bites for people, right?
Okay.
I don't try to do everything in any one segment, but to help you understand the process and how you can start moving forward and why you can move forward. It varies on content. Sometimes
Okay.
it's much more action oriented. Sometimes more think about the theory, have a mindset shift because I
Right.
think if we don't understand where we're headed, it's hard to do anything about it.
Mm,
So all
wow.
of that is there.
Wow. Thank you very much, Doctor, for making us aware of that. So that again, that link is
SaveTheMarriagePodcast.com.
savethemarriagepodcast.com. Check out that link and yeah, get some vital information in regard to, and I just want to add this to it. Even if it's not something that directly correlates with you or whatever, and it's good just to educate yourself, you know. Uh, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, go ahead.
So here's the interesting thing. After I wrote Even Save the Marriage, I had people coming going, why is this not mandatory reading for people who are getting ready to get married? Because I talk about how a marriage gets in trouble. And my response is people don't take action
Right,
before they're in trouble. They think that they have already won that, right? They think
right,
love will win the day. When I was having conversations with those people before they got married, I'm like, you know the statistics. Everybody knows the statistics. Why do you
right,
think you're going
right,
to beat the statistics? And they're like, because we have real love. Our love is real. Other people, they misread it, but because we
right.
have real love, that'll get us to the end.
Yeah,
Love doesn't do it.
no,
Love is a great start point, but there's
right,
something that's got to sustain it. And
right,
unfortunately, we don't pay attention to that enough until we're in pain, until it's in trouble. As much as I think anybody can benefit from reading about relationships and understanding relationships because we're all in relationships, I
right,
think that our country does a horrible job of preparing
right,
people to go
right,
into such an important relationship. We do more teaching kids to drive a car than we
right,
do getting couples ready to be married.
right. And that's a great point and great another uh, point of reference in regards to awareness and yeah, yeah, that's a whole different podcast. I'm gonna tell you that right now that we could have in regards to how the education system doesn't prepare you for a lot
Yeah,
of things,
a lot
you
of
know.
things. Yep.
Yeah, so amazing. Again, I would like to thank you, Dr. Lee, for coming onto the podcast and imparting us with your great wisdom, perspectives, research, knowledge. Just thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, yes. And thank you everyone for watching and or listening. Be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. Also share this, not only to help the platform grow, but to get this vital information out there. Yes, yes. Thank you very much. And if anyone is interested and you think you might be a good match to come on the podcast, simply email me 333empower@gmail.com. That's EMPOWER at gmail.com. shoot me a message. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your support and see you soon. Love and appreciation to everyone. See you soon. Light and Empowered Evolved.